So this is installment 2 on, what is this, the 23rd of June at the Red Pill Expo in Bozeman, Montana. I'm Arlen Williams, and this is the man of the moment. So you have been working you got involved with McAfee as well as a few other things, because no job in computer sales lasts very long, it seems.
Right.
And you're a thinker. You're a quite seasoned gatherer of facts and factoids and putting them together. How did that start in politics and figuring out what's going on in government and finance?
Well, it's amazing what you learn when you're trying to survive. Um, you know, I there are programs which are called counterintelligence programs that the CIA has run all over the world for 75 years. And the idea being that you can have red teams or kill teams go kill your opposition, but if too many people start showing up dead, like in Argentina, for instance, or Chile, the mothers, they come out, they go to the fountain, the mothers of Wednesday or Sunday, I can't remember what day they would come out, and it creates a lot of blowback politically. In the 70s, they really worked on a program in Vietnam, which is kind of a low intensity, and it really kind of is modeled on the British on some of their programs, where it's you don't go out and just directly kill someone, but what you do is you create an enemies list. First thing you do, then you get control of the regional or provincial police stations with a kind of a intelligence center or a fusion center, and then you start collecting all the information you possibly can on someone. And what you're looking for is negative information about your enemies list. And then you start parlaying that information, and you can even start targeting those people with, let's say you target them for, going on a date with an underage girl, or, trying to get him to go and do drink some night and, then go drive drunk or something. You can set up these traps along the way. And then once you get them in the criminal justice system, you're home free, because now you can start parlaying the different contacts you have in the prison system and start saying, okay, well, if you want out early, it'd be nice to drop a barbell on this guy's head. It takes a lot longer to do that,
Okay.
but you can do it against a whole population all at once.
Oh, yeah.
So the low intensity type operations can last years, because it's against the whole population that you're operating against. You're not just focusing on any one individual. And so I got in one of these kind of low intensity programs because of my involvement in resisting the FBI on one of their kind of what I call fake terrorism cases. And if you want to fake terrorism cases, you can go back to the and the fake terrorism is basically do two things. It's to double or triple the budget, mostly, and it's also to split organizations and create your own force, your own police force. So what happened with the FBI, for instance, it was mostly field FBI. And the counterterrorism division was created, I think, in the 93, 94-ish time frame, or at least that's when it started growing. But field FBI was like this, and then counterterrorism division was like this. Well, we had the WTC bombing, we had Oklahoma City, we had these executive orders, like I was saying, the presidential directives, and counterterrorism kept going up.
And meanwhile, we had, like I mentioned yesterday, John P. O'Neill with the FBI trying to get the CIA, time and time again, with Richard Clark and under Clinton, to plink off bin Laden, and they just would not do it. And then they got rid of John P. O'Neill because apparently bin Laden was a reason for being.
Yeah. Bin Laden was a very useful archenemy, like the Russians were an archenemy. But with the fall of communism, you really have a problem in 91, because you no longer have an archenemy. You need one. And so 92, 93-ish, that's where I'm saying the counterterrorism idea came up. We're going to make this nemesis, the Muslim nemesis. And so they're building that idea up. Well, now the counterterrorism division, and there's a wall between the counterterrorism division and field FBI. So they don't know what each other does. They can't look at each other's files. Well, counterterrorism can look at field FBI, but field FBI can't look and see what counterterrorism. Well, if you look at all the people that are running the FBI now, Andrew McCabe, go back to Mueller, go back to Comey, all of them come from that side of the business. Now, Comey's a little different because he had some field experience with Bridgewater Capital and Lockheed and a couple of other kind of stints. But those were all kind of military-industrial complex plays, if you will. One was to invest in subcontractors of Lockheed, and the other one was working directly for Lockheed. And that's what we have now with JTTF is basically this incursion program into the FBI. So the FBI field now has been infiltrated with this kind of CIA program. And this counterintelligence, which most people know from the 70s as COINTELPRO, you just shorten counterintelligence program down to COINTELPRO,
Right.
has been expanded and reborn in 1992-93. Sibel Edmonds talks about this. James Corbett, who's going to be speaking here in a little bit, talks about it. And that's when you really start bringing in the nasty stuff, the CIA stuff, into the counterintelligence. So it's something that in America, there's probably 3 million people on this list. Is kind of a, who's naughty, who's nice, and people I don't like. And I got on the list. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but you get very creative in figuring out what is happening to you when stuff is happening.
I know bad things have happened to my computers and their hard drives, and sure enough, friends of mine, we have evidence of people having tapped. This was kind of like during the height, the rise of the suspicions about Barack Obama. Phones tapped, weird phone calls, crank calls. People were calling me and hanging up or just hanging on the line, trying to harass me for maybe up to 5-6 times an evening. And then I called the sheriff's office and asked them if they could do anything about it. And from that moment, they said, "Oh, there's nothing we can do." But from that moment on, when it was recorded that I had a landline call to the sheriff's office, that stopped. And of course, we know Cheryl Atkinson with her issues.
Yeah. Well, the whole idea is to get the person to exhibit some kind of paranoia, and then get them diagnosed as quickly as you can and get them on meds. Because then, if the person suicides, then you say, "Oh, they were on meds. They were being treated for depression," and then sweep another one under the rug. A lot of the whistleblowers, the program was originally created for like political enemies, but now a lot of the whistleblowers in the military, the women that talk about the rape cases, have been targeted. The people who talk about war atrocities have been targeted. So this isn't just a 50 people here and 100 people here. In the old days, it was the Black Panthers over here and the Weathermen over there. It was kind of targeted at groups that actually had violence in their chart.
Right.
But this isn't that at all. This is kind of like more like PETA, or I'm against Abu Ghraib, much more softer violations, if you will.
And then, of course, on the right-wing side, all that stuff that came out of the Obama DHS and, like you're saying, the Joint Terrorism Strike Force and so on, about watch out for these crazy pro-lifers and people that cite the Constitution and call themselves Christians. And that got a little scary.
Well, the whole demonization of people for whatever their political beliefs are, for if you, sanctity of human life, if you believe in that, to be all of a sudden called a, white supremacist extremist, it's like, how did that get, how did we jump there, and conspiracy theorists, it was pretty clear, came from the Kennedy assassination. Is people looking into it, the whole term conspiracy theorist was invented for people after the Kennedy assassination.
Sure. So that got you involved, and how did you get involved in monitoring what in the world was going on with Hillary Clinton? Was that during the election time?
During the election, I was kind of a Bernie guy. I gave to Bernie like 5 different times, and then I was just, wow, the convention and all that. And the vote fraud was just, the chair throwing in Las Vegas, the vote fraud in New York, throwing away all the students that had registered. I was in Portland at the time and working with all these people that were volunteering for Bernie, working the phones and knocking on the doors and everything. And there was no support whatsoever for Hillary. I mean, everybody was for Bernie. Bernie ended up winning, but polls a week before were saying that she was going to win by 20 points. And it was just the most laughable. I mean, you really had to search for somebody who wanted Hillary. And it just that was the start of it. And then the whole Trump thing, they said it was $1.5 billion she spent, but there's other reports that say there was a dark money of another $1.5 billion spent in just not any kind of platform, just negative, negative, negative on Trump. I mean, we saw the bus thing how many times?
Right.
500 times? Yeah, okay, he said that. I processed that. You don't need to show that to me again. So the last straw for me was really when these WikiLeaks guys started dying. I call them the WikiLeaks trio. So John Jones, the lawyer in London, Gavin McFadden died, who was the founder of WikiLeaks, and then the U.S. lawyer Mike Ratner died in May or June. So three WikiLeaks people died right in a row. The Seth Rich and Sean Lucas had died, and then this Eric Braverman had gone missing. So I call it the Wiki Six.
And that's when you went on video.
That's when I went on video because I actually tied all those together as the Wiki Six from day one and said these are all connected. Seth Rich is leaking to WikiLeaks. Sean Lucas is involved. There's another person we still don't know that I think is Eric Braverman, and that's the Wiki Six.
Okay, how do you start piecing it together after that? May I be so bold as to say, who are your sources? What are you doing? Where are you getting this stuff from? So if you can answer detail, that's fine, or whatever you want to do.
Sure. Well, I did some things earlier to helping. I worked indirectly through Rudy Giuliani in New York, and I had made some contacts with NYPD, and a lot of those guys end up going into security business, or they go into anti-terrorism. Mm-hmm. So a lot of retired NYPD from old days. Mm-hmm. Then there's retired FBI, also from the old days, 2002, 2003, 2004 days. And then recently, because my channel is out there and people see me, I'm getting more CIA coming my way, which has been very helpful.
Great. Got to watch out for those CIA people. I got friends that talk to quote unquote ex-CIA people, and they still like to hold the Russia scare in reserve and still blame so much on Russia. Not that they don't do a lot of bad stuff and that they're still involved in the communist movements in South America and Cuba and whatever they inherited. But it gets a little tiresome for me. And I think that the CIA people that I've seen, heard of, I should say, through a third and fourth hand, are a little protective about the top of the pyramid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking about being involved in drug trafficking, and you're talking about child trafficking, and you're talking about murder, and you're talking about a boys' club where when you join it, it's blood in and you don't get out. I mean, if you're in the inner circle. So for anybody at the CIA to be talking is a miracle.
So tell me, there's this lady, I forget her name, the wife of a military man who's claimed that 70-90% of the top military brass are compromised, chiefly sexually, through pedophilia or homosexual encounters and things like this. And then there's this fellow that goes around and in the blue police suit that claims similar things. Is it that? How could it possibly be that bad? We chatted a little bit about this yesterday. How could there possibly be such a saturation of really nastiness without more whistleblowers, at least on their deathbed? Or what do you think? What's the real level of that kind of stuff? You always have to separate the chaff and the overblown telephone game gossip.
Well, Kay Griggs, I think is who you're referring to, and she's right. I mean, the way the military works is there's a lot of field commands and you can do a lot with never seeing this seamy side of kind of where the Pentagon meets Capitol Hill, somewhere in the middle of the Potomac, I guess. And it's around the commands. So in Miami, there's SOCOM, which is the Southern Command, and that's the sphere that they guard. And then there's CENTCOM in Tampa, Florida, which has the Middle East, basically. And then you have in Nebraska, you have STRATCOM, which is the global strategic services that are provided, like strategic bombers and so forth, for and just intelligence service, special forces, and all that sort of thing. Each one of them has their own, but by concentrating on the commands, these are the people that are coming up through the Pentagon, through the matriculating, and these are where you have these rings, because like Steve Feinberg says, the guy who runs DynCorp, which is one of the key contractors in all this moving of material, everybody is compromised at that point. You don't get to that next level, that Petraeus level, without being compromised.
Okay.
And
Why don't we do this? Why don't we leave that as a cliffhanger? And it's been another about 15 minutes. Why don't we do one more segment like this?
Okay.
And let me think a minute before.